What's up and welcome back. I'm John Stark from MacTheMovieGuy.com, and I have sepsis. Uh, this is this is a review of Only Murders in the Building, Season 4, Episode 1. We're back with a brand new season of Only Murders, and presumably inside of a building. And spoilers, beware, obviously. So this show does have audio description on Hulu, and I'm still a blind film critic. I didn't say that at the top. I told you guys I had sepsis because there's a really funny line in the first episode where one of the characters turns to Charles and says, "Everybody has sepsis," and I was like, I was like, what? I was like, this is such a weird. He's just sort of like doing like old man things, and he's like, "Everybody has sepsis." I'm like, what a weird thing to just kind of pull out and be like, everybody has sepsis nowadays. What's this thing we all have? Ah, sepsis. You know, okay, I guess. I'd like some statistics on that, please. That would be nice, but sure, we'll go with that. Um, so we're back with a new season, and this first episode runs a little over 30 minutes, about 36 minutes. So it's pretty quick, pretty fresh, and gives you a good little indication of will this season be good. I'm gonna give this episode a pass because I think it knows. Like, there's sometimes when you can see what the writers are trying to do, and they're kind of like wink, wink, nudging their way out of a situation, and they're like, "Oh, whence last we left us ourselves on Only Murders in the Building, this is where we were." Um, and there's a little bit of that to it, although some of it feels like it's almost like an unnecessary self-inflicted wound. So, at the beginning of the very top of the series, our three leads, Martin Short, Steve Martin, and Selena Gomez, are just now wrapping up, finishing the final episode, the final podcast for their season of Only Murders in the Building from last season on sort of the resolution of Ben's murder. And there's a little power failure, a little like, and they're like, "Oh, what was that?" Uh, by the end of the episode, I figured out what it was, but uh, anyway, they're like, "Oh, it's another power surge," and they're like, "Do we need to re-record the last little bit?" And they're like, "Oh, where's Zaz? Zaz's been gone for a while. Where is she? Well, if you remember, in the end of season 3, they ended with the murder for this season, with Zaz goes up to Charles's apartment and she gets shot through the window, and she's like trying to write something out in blood. So we're like, oh well, this is gonna be productive, because they'll come back and there'll at least be something written on the floor in blood that'll, I hope it's like Rosebud. Rosebud. Oh my God, what does that mean? I don't know. Um, and so we're building to that. We're building to that moment. And so eventually they're like, oh, let's go upstairs and we'll open it up. And it's weird how they sort of like navigate around, but they go upstairs and Zaz isn't there anymore. Zaz is gone. Body, somebody has wiped up the blood, so whatever she wrote on the floor is not technically there like not immediately visible, I should say. And they pop cork and they just kind of celebrate, and Charles gets a text from Zaz saying, "Sorry, I had to leave, baculating he's a double for this thing." And so, Charles is like, "Oh, all right, well, okay." And then they find out that the musical that they were in from last season is shutting down. It's lost its financing because the financiers were murderers, so they're pulling out so they can finance their trial. He's Martin Short's got a really funny joke here about that. But so is this worth the new season? And what's the new season going to be? Well, Hollywood is calling, which we kind of knew. They had hinted at it. And they're going to fly off to Los Angeles because somebody wants to make an Only Murders in the Building movie. They want to option the podcast for a film. There's a studio head out there that is trying to coax them and wants to woo them, although she kind of describes every single one of them as losers, which is hilariously not the way necessarily to go about it. And then we see this party, this big soiree, where everybody kind of they meet who's supposed to be playing them. I love that. I love the Charles one is less. We spend less time with that, but I love how uh like Selena Gomez gets Eva Longoria, and she's like, "What?" Like at first you're like, "Wow, Eva Longoria is playing me," but she's like, "Why did they age me up?" And Eva's just like, "Well, because it's creepy." Like they tested it and they were like, they found the idea of two men of their age with a girl of your age to be creepy. I'm like, I don't know, are these like real things? Like I'm wondering if like this is real feedback that the show has ever received, and this is their way of like thumbing their nose at those people. So I guess if we go forward in future episodes with this, Eva Longoria will continue to show up as the person playing Mabel in the movie version. I don't know. We only get one episode. I love that we get one episode drops of Only Murders. So Zach Galifianakis is hilarious because he immediately has like a bad reaction, like a bad vibe, and he turns and like the studio head is trying to get him to come back, and he's like, "No, me," and then he just lists a whole bunch of movies that he's completely not right for. He's like, the only, he wants to do, like, he'll only do this film if he gets to do another passion project of his, and his passion projects are all like me, Spider-Man, but me, like Legally Blonde, but me. And then finally she agrees to Aaron Brockovich, but me. I need to see that movie. That's a movie. I want to see a movie that's like Aaron Brockovich, but it's Zach Galifianakis instead of Julia Roberts. I feel like there's some brilliancy going on there. So yeah, so he gets roped back in, and of course, exactly what I knew was going to happen, since they named the actor, and we have actors now playing themselves instead of playing other versions of themselves. Scott Bakula shows up, so Charles is like, "Oh well, how Zaz?" And Bakula's like, I was going to ask you because Zaz never showed up. Zaz was supposed to double me on his thing. I was like, that's weird that the project was real. Do you know what I'm saying? Like while I'm trying to think about like who the killer could be, I'm also thinking about like, wow, that killer knew about the Bakula project. Because like it's one of those things where it's like if a killer was not in the know and did not know what was going on in Hollywood, you wouldn't know that she was actually supposed to go do that gig. So it would be something you wouldn't necessarily respond with. You'd just be like, I had to go. Had to run. Peace. But no. I mean, she actually did have that gig. So obviously they're worried about Zaz. They go to her place. Hasn't been touched. Some random notes there. They see all these x-rays on the wall, which become really important because it shows all the fractures in the bones and everything that Zaz has had replaced over the years. And Charles makes a comment, which is really important for the first episode, about how Zaz gets all of her joint replacements from Bulgaria because Bulgaria makes the best or cheapest, or I don't know, something about that. I can't remember what it was, but it's important that it's Bulgaria. And there's that. There's also some really nice moments. I'll say, I was kind of hoping in a weird way, because we do have, like, Howard is in this episode. Like, we have some other Only Murders people who do kind of, like, roll back through here. But, when they opened up the top of the episode, and I was like, oh, good, we're kind of where we left off. I was like, maybe that means Meryl Streep. Maybe that means Meryl Streep, who got an Emmy nomination for season 3 of Only Murders. I know she doesn't do really series regular gigs, but I would love to see her back. in this, or like continue in this universe as a character, instead of just being like jettisoned off and being like, well, you were just a season 3 thing. Because they do kind of this thing where Martin Short gives a line about where she's gone. He's like, oh, I lost her. She flew off to film her thing. And it's like, oh, that's it. Okay. We're just going to let her exit through a random throwaway line. But what's really interesting is that, and that's why I said it was kind of like a self-inflicted wound, because we didn't even need that line. She actually does show up at the party, at this big Hollywood party for the hopeful launch of Only Murders in the Building movie. And they still have to agree to it. They still have to sign a contract. And so, yeah. She shows up and they have like a kind of nice moment. She just tells him that she loves him. He says it back, but he's not really sure he's really ready to like leave New York, to move out of New York and to move to Los Angeles, because now she's shooting Grey's Anatomy New Orleans. Just whatever. I mean, it's such a commentary on TV show spinoffs, just like going to other cities and being like, and New Orleans, of course, one that we've done before. So I'm not surprised, but it does. And Grey's Anatomy has had spinoffs before, so it's a good joke. It's a Disney owned franchise, just like Only Murders. So I thought the joke is funny. There's another like acronym or something that she has for the show too, that she's like, well, that's what we call it, to shorten it. So yeah, she does pop up and she has a nice little moment there for people who are like, oh my God, is Meryl going to be back? And it's like, I feel like she's going to be really limited. She could pop up again though, because they're exploring this relationship between the two of them. And depending on which way they decide to lean with this couple, it's like they could go there. I feel like it's more like a series finale type of thing. Like if they say like season 5 is the final season of Only Murders in the Building, it could end with him ending up with Meryl Streep, and then she comes back for like some episodes in season 5 just to kind of like be like, well, we're together. I mean, this series isn't going to go on forever. Most shows nowadays don't run 10 seasons if they are considered to be, you know what I'm saying? Like they seem to want to tap out. It's so weird that they're talking about bringing Ted Lasso back without Jason Sudeikis. Like they've optioned the cast that was optionable for a season 4, but Jason Sudeikis is not on that list. Anyway, if in case you didn't know that was happening, they're considering a season 4 of Ted Lasso. They picked up the options on the main cast, but Jason Sudeikis is out, done so. Anyway, unless they throw enough money at him, but I guess his contract did not continue an option. Anyway, I'm talking about Only Murders. Yeah, so they go back to, they're in Los Angeles, they fly all the way back to New York because they're like, something's wrong. And then they discover, because they get a phone call from their doorman about fixing the window in Charles's apartment. He's like, what window? I didn't tell you to fix my window. It's like, oh, there's a little hole with the whistling. And he had mentioned that he heard whistling earlier, and it was like, I thought it was Zaz. And Scott Bakula does a weird thing with like a bottle or something like that, and he thinks that's Zaz too. He just keeps hearing, because I guess Zaz whistles all the time. I don't know. So they go back to the apartment and they put things together. There was Howard has this new dog that was a former cadaver dog, and the cadaver dog was sort of going nuts in Charles's apartment, and they didn't put 2 and 2 together then. So basically, we get all of the clues that come together. The fact that she clearly has not been in her apartment. She didn't go to Bakula. First of all, we saw her literally get shot. So in the season 3 finale, but they're putting all the clues together. And they follow the cadaver dog who barks at the trash chute, going downstairs. And so they go downstairs to the incinerator, which it says, by the way, is out of order. It says the incinerator is out of order. Well, it's not. There's like a pile of ash in there. and Charles reaches in and pulls out um, a joint attachment thing that says Bulgaria on it, which is why I said that was important. So they finally have figured out there was another murder in the building. And they have all these jokes about, they're like, wow, it's the name of our podcast is really limited because, we can only do murders that are in the building. And they're like, well, how many times is that really going to happen? And again, it's almost like not good to be around these guys because, sort of like it's not necessarily a good thing to be a friend of Jessica Fletcher, because she's just gonna find murders that she wrote. Yeah, it's very interesting. I figured out the fact that based on the timeline and when the power surge was, that was when they turned on the incinerator. Now, I don't think they figured that out, but I'm thinking like the audience has figured that out. Maybe. If not, well, that's what that is. Because if you look at the timeline when they're doing the podcast recording, somebody had to be up there to grab Zaz's body, throw her down the fire chute, and put her in the incinerator. And the episode ends on this sort of like kind of dark, chilling moment, where, because Charles said, "You're not Zaz," like texts the person back knowing that somebody has Zaz's phone, and the response back is, "Not your fucking friend." And I was like, wow, all right, we're gonna get into it. It's gonna be a dark season. I can feel it. Of Only Murders in the Building. So who's the killer? I don't know. I don't know that we've even seen the killer at this point, because the characters that have been introduced, although last time I didn't know that necessarily would be who it was. I thought the way they did Ben's murder was really interesting. We haven't had necessarily enough characters introduced to where I'm like, well, yeah, obviously, because it's not going to be the returning cast. It's not going to be Meryl Streep. It's not going to be Howard. So it's not going to be those guys. So really the only new characters we have a studio head, we have a writer, which I guess it could be the writer, but the writer is like, I don't know, maybe, unlikely, just, it's somebody who's like following them around, and like every time they say a phrase, he like writes it down. He's like, oh, that's great. I feel like it's more of like a gag character. I don't think this character is meant to be taken seriously. I'm like, why would the studio executive do it? Like, why would they call us Zaz? Like, what is? I guess maybe that's like the most obvious. It doesn't make any sense for any of the actors who are playing the main three to do it. Like, is Scott Bakula going to be the killer? Like, some of these people are actually playing themselves, which would be a really bold move for Only Murders in the Building to be like, who is the killer? Scott Bakula. Oh, you mean he played the killer? No, I mean Scott Bakula was the killer. Like, but I'm excited. I thought it was I thought it was good. It's kind of awkward in the beginning, but I feel like they're addressing it in a way where they're like, well, this is the way we have to, so we're gonna walk right through it. And they just kind of walk through the awkwardness of having to pick up where they left off for this season in order to work. But by the end of the episode, and you see all the pieces that are coming together, and you're like, well, we're off to the races. So I'm excited about this, and whether or not I continue to recap Only Murders will depend on whether or not anybody wants me to and watch this video. So like it, whatever. Do you do you, girlfriend. You do you. Audio description wise, I thought it was good, obviously, because I was able to follow the whole show with all the little clues. So that's your biggest clue, is on a show like this that's also a murder mystery. Did you find all of the clues, and were some of them not immediately obvious to you? Because you can't telegraph everything. I mean, some of it, obviously, as a sighted person, is like, well, I would have noticed that. you know, like the mail piling up outside of Zaz's place. It's really hard to not describe that in a way which would indicate it just is like mail piling up outside her house, like she hasn't been there in a while. So, uh, you know, also, I guess it just doesn't rain, but maybe I needed more context into like how mail could be there and not soaking wet wherever she lives. Anyway, and also no porch pirates. So look at that. Yeah, things like that just I was like, well, there's no way. But there are other things where it's obvious that like when they turn on the lights and you can see apparently x-rays everywhere. I got a vibe from the audio description that the room was littered with x-rays because she's broken so many bones or had things replaced that because he's like, well, that's Zaz's pride is every bone she's ever broken as a stunt person. So, like her trophies basically. So maybe it was super noticeable. Sort of like if you walked into a room that was, and then there's just clowns everywhere, you'd be like, oh my God. And like, how else do you describe that room, right? You're just like, well, there are clowns everywhere. Okay. Um, and the Bulgaria thing is a spoken line, so there's nothing audio description can't really avoid that. And then later on, they put it in the audio description to connect it to what he said earlier. So really, the best thing, you know, is maybe the coolest link that you don't know is a link at the time is a power failure, but that's not in the audio description either. There just is a power failure. So that's not something that the audio description reveals to you, and that's probably the thing at the time that you might not realize is connected to anything at all right away. Because it's like it happens so up at the front of the episode. And they act like they've had power failures before. And they're like, oh, well, you know, that's just another one. Cool. So yeah, I thought it did a good job, and it didn't immediately be like danger Will Robinson on certain things. So, um, very nice job. I'm gonna give Only Murders in the Building season 4 episode 1 an A minus. I think it's a nice start to the season, and I'm interested to see where we go from here. So thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the other side.